In a quiet village deep in Enugu state, a beautiful woman went to fetch water one morning, alone, but under an old mango tree. She was seen, not by people, but by spirits. Two spirit children watched her, and made a choice that would change her life forever. They entered her womb. 9 months later, she gave birth to perfect twin girls. They came from the mango tree, but they weren't meant to stay. They came with a promise and a price. When it was time to go back, they vanished. What happened next shook the village to its roots, and led their parents to uncover a truth too terrifying to imagine. In the quiet, Miss village of Oji in Enugu state, mornings arrive slowly, creeping over the hills like shy visitors. Time itself moved differently in Oji. There were no horns, no alarms, no sudden noises. Just the rhythmic crowing of the cock, the faint rustling of palm leaves, and the soothing echo of women's voices at the stream. The air often carried the scent of wet earth, mango bark, and firewood smoke. It was a village where nothing strange ever happened, until the day Tomorrow arrived. Tomorrow was not from Oji. Her skin was radiant, like the inside of a ripe avocado seed, deep brown and glowing. Her eyes, almond-shaped and distant, gave her an otherworldly presence. When Okoro, a well-respected palm wine tapper, brought her home after a visit to his maternal village, the elders said nothing, but their wives whispered behind closed doors. That one's beauty is not ordinary, they said. She walks like a woman who dreams while awake, but Okoro didn't care. He was proud of her, proud to have a wife who could quiet a room with just her entrance. Tomorrow was soft-spoken, obedient, but always watching. She watched the sky too long. She watched the wind. She listened to trees. Still, she was kind and gentle, and soon, even the sharpest tongues in Oji found little to say about her. Except for one thing, she had no child. A year passed, no signs of pregnancy. The pressure grew. Old women began bringing fertility roots wrapped in raffia. Midwives came uninvited, rubbing her belly and whispering incantations. Tomorrow accepted them all with a smile, but never asked for more. Okoro began to spend longer hours in his hut, especially on evenings when childless women were discussed at gatherings. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a morning soaked in dew and mystery. The sky wore a soft blue cloth, and the wind hummed with a strange rhythm. Tomorrow rose before the village stirred. She wrapped herself in her faded white wrapper, picked up her clay pot, and began the walk to Kalawa River, the village's sacred river. She passed through narrow footpaths, letting her fingers brush against the leaves. Her beauty in the morning light was almost surreal. Even the trees seemed to bow slightly as she walked by. And then, just before the stream, she reached the old mango tree. The tree stood tall, ancient, and white-branched like a guardian spirit. Beneath it, the air was heavy, not with fear, but presence. There was no one there. Not visibly, but beneath the leaves, in the hidden realm where spirits play, children were laughing. Invisible to the human eye, they hopped and clapped, playing ten-ten with joy and ease. 7 of them. Spirit children. Mischievous. Curious. Dangerous. Yet playful. Then, 2 of them stopped. Twin girls, identical in form, their eyes glowing silver, their skin the color of dusk. She's beautiful, one whispered, I want to be with her. The other said, you must not, warned an older boy spirit. You know the law. But we only want to stay a while, the first girl said. She is gentle. She is lonely. She will love us. They turned to the spirit mother, taller, sad-eyed, with white threads flowing from her hair. If you go, she said softly, you must come back. This world is not for you. And when the time comes, the price must be paid. We agree, they said in unison. Then, as Tomorrow bent to scoop water into her clay pot at the riverbank, they vanished from the spirit plane and entered her womb, Tomorrow stood still for a moment. Her pot felt lighter than usual. The air around her is suddenly warm. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling nothing. And yet, everything. 9 moons later, her cries echoed through Oji. Not one, but 2 girls were born, identical, perfect, radiant. She named them Kolechi and Kosi. The villagers marveled. Songs were sung. Drums were beaten. But that mango tree rustled with an unseen wind that day. A wind that whispered to the river, and the river to the sky, and the sky to the ears of the spirits. They have come. The arrival of Kolechi and Kosi was more than a blessing, it was a miracle. Oji village had never seen such identical twins. Their skin shimmered with a golden hue under sunlight, and their eyes, large and unusually bright, carried a depth that unsettled even the elders. From infancy, they moved as one, crying together, turning their heads at the same moment, even blinking in sync. Some called it divine. Others, unnatural. By their first birthday, their speech had already begun. Not babbling, but full sentences. They called their mother name with the softest affection and spoke to each other in a language no one else understood, sometimes in the dead of night, sometimes while giggling under the mango tree that stood like a sentinel at the edge of the forest path. Tamara, for all her grace and calm, began to worry. She often woke at night to see them standing by the window, staring out into the dark, holding hands. When she called them back to bed, they came quietly, but with an eerie smile. They never disobeyed, but it was obedience without warmth. Like children pretending to be what they want, at age 4, they began to disappear briefly during the day. One moment they'd be in the backyard, and the next, gone. Tamara once found them deep in the bush, barefoot and singing softly in front of the mango tree. "Who brought you here?" she asked, trembling. Kosi had looked at her and whispered, "We come here when we miss home." Tamara told Okoro, but he waved it off. "They're just playing," he said. "Children wonder." But even Okoro couldn't ignore what the neighbors began to report. Chickens would stop laying eggs after the twins walked by. A goat miscarried the same day Kolechi sat in front of its pen, staring for hours. An old woman claimed the girls whispered to her during her nap, though she lived alone and swore no one entered her hut. "Something is not right with those children," people whispered at the market, but what could Tamara say? That she sometimes felt like the twins could hear her thoughts. That they'd answer questions she never asked aloud. That once, when she cried alone in the room, both girls had come in, humming a tune she'd never taught them, one her grandmother used to sing in her dreams. By the time they turned 7, the sounds grew louder. One rainy afternoon, they were found under the mango tree again, this time, barefoot and dressed in white wrappers they had sewn from bedsheets. They were chanting. When Tamara screamed their names, they turned around slowly, their eyes glazed like glass. The rain soaked them, but they didn't shiver. They smiled. "We were here before," Kolechi said. "This is where we came from," Kosi added. The villagers became uneasy. A meeting was held in secret. Some suggested a cleansing ritual. Others urged Okoro to take the twins to a church for deliverance. But Tamara, shielding her daughters with a fierce mother's love, refused. "They are not demons," she snapped. "They are my children." Yet even she knew that wasn't fully true. One night, she awoke to find them gone again. She ran out barefoot, heart pounding, and found them sitting by the riverbank, legs dangling into the water. The moon was full, casting silver light over their skin. They didn't turn to her this time. Instead, Kosi murmured without looking back, "Mama, it's almost time." Tamara froze. "What time?" But they said no more. They stood, walked past her without a word, and went to bed. That night, Tamara didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, staring at their tiny shoes lined neatly by the door, and for the first time since their birth, she felt afraid, not for her children, but of them. Somewhere deep in the bush, the mango tree shook in the windless night. And the river, Kalawa, whispered secrets no human ears could understand. By the time the twins turned 9, the air in Oji felt heavier, like something unseen was waiting. The villagers no longer waved at Kelechi and Kosi when they passed. Some turned away completely. Others crossed themselves in silence. Even the birds seemed to avoid the mango tree. It had become a place of unspoken dread. Tamara noticed the shift in her daughters too. They had become even more withdrawn, more attuned to a world she couldn't see. They no longer played with other children, even when invited. They preferred to sit alone by the river or wander near the tree, talking to no one but each other in that eerie, forgotten language. At times, they would burst into laughter at nothing, tilting their heads as though listening to a joke no one else could hear. One day, as Tamara prepared yam in the kitchen, she overheard them whispering outside her window. Not unusual. What was unusual, however, was what she heard. "She will cry," Kelechi said softly, "but we must go." "We promised," Kosi replied. "It's almost the river's time again." Tamara dropped her knife. Her hands trembled. She rushed outside, but they had vanished again, gone into the bush without a sound. That evening, she confronted Okoro. "Something is happening," she said, her voice hoarse. "They speak of leaving. Of promises." Okoro was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I've seen them talking to the river." Tamara's breath caught. He nodded. "Twice now. Once I followed them. They stood by Kalawa and placed their hands on the water. It flowed. Differently. Like it rose to meet them." "They are not ordinary," Tamara whispered. "We knew that. But I thought love would be enough," he replied. The next morning was a Thursday. The twins woke before dawn, dressed themselves in white wrappers again, the same makeshift garments from the night of the storm, and told their mother they were going to the river. Tamara's heart sank. "Why today?" she asked. They smiled, too calm, too knowing. "It's time to wash our feet," Kosi said. "The river is waiting," Kelechi added. Tamara hesitated. Something within her wanted to scream. To hold them back, to bar the door. But something else, deep, older, more resigned, stopped her. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was instinct. She watched them go down the winding bush path. It was still early, and the sun had not yet broken through the mist. Their forms disappeared into the trees like smoke. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 5. They didn't return. By midday, the panic had gripped the village. A search was organized, Okoro leading the men, Tamara too hysterical to speak. They scoured the riverbanks, tore through the bush, called their names till their voices cracked. Nothing, no footprints. No torn wrappers. No broken twigs. No sign that the girls had ever passed that way at all. It was as though the earth had swallowed them whole. Evening came, and the mango tree swayed in a windless calm. Children were pulled indoors. Lamps were lit. Tamara sat on the ground in front of her home, her wrapper soaked in dust and tears. She did not speak. She did not blink. She stared at the bush path, waiting. Okoro, red-eyed and drenched in sweat, approached her slowly. "They're gone," he said, voice low. "No," Tamara said, her voice like ash. "They are not lost. They went back." "To where?" She turned slowly to him. "To where they came from." That night, thunder cracked over Oji, though not a single drop of rain fell. Dogs barked at shadows. And from deep within the trees, near the Kalawa River, the villagers swore they heard it, the soft echo of children singing 10-10, only there were no children there, only the mango tree, only the river, and something. Watching, 3 days passed. Not a whisper of the twins. Not a sign of life near the Kalawa River. Not even a ripple from the water that once shimmered with calm. The entire village of Oji fell into an uneasy silence, as though the land itself had entered mourning. Tamara did not eat. Her eyes were bloodshot, her lips dry, and her once smooth skin looked drawn. Aged. She no longer wept, there were no more tears left in her. She sat on the front steps of her home from dawn until night, waiting for her daughters to come back down that bush path barefoot, laughing, as if nothing had happened, but nothing came. Not even birds sang in orgy anymore. Okoro, lost between grief and confusion, finally agreed to what he had long resisted, a visit to the Dibia. The villagers spoke of him in hushed tones, Dibia Onyuniku, the last son of the Ezioni priesthood. He lived alone deep within Udi Hills, where the trees grew so thick, they blocked out sunlight even at noon. People said his eyes were white from birth, that he could speak to spirits, that he once brought back a man who had been dead for 3 days. Others said he was cursed. Okoro didn't care, with Samora beside him, silent, holding a piece of Kosi's wrapper in her hand. They journeyed for hours through the hills, the silence between them louder than any scream. They reached the shrine at dusk. The Dibia's compound was surrounded by carved stones, feathers, skulls, and dried herbs. Smoke rose from a clay pot in the center. When they arrived, the Dibia was already waiting, sitting cross-legged, his face covered in white chalk, his milky eyes staring at nothing. And yet, everything. "You have come," he said, before they even spoke. Tamara knelt. "My children. Our daughters. They are not yours," the Dibia cut in, calmly. Tamara's heart stopped. Okoro flinched. "What do you mean?" The Dibia leaned forward, his voice thick like oil. "Those girls were not born to live. They were lent." "Lent?" Tamara gasped. "From the other side," he said. "From the realm beneath the mango tree." He tossed cowries into a bowl of red soil and watched how they landed. He spat dry herbs onto fire. A sharp smell filled the air. "They are spirit children. Umumiri. Born of the river and the mango tree. Children who once lived. Or never lived. But chose to come again. For beauty. For warmth. For love." Tears welled in Tamara's eyes. "They chose you, Tamara," he said. "They saw your light. Your beauty. Your loneliness. And they begged their spirit mother to follow you from the tree. But everything borrowed must be returned." "No," Tamara whispered. "They were real. I carried them. I fed them. I sang them to sleep. They were mine." "They loved you," Onineku said gently. "And that is the sin." He turned to Okoro. "They broke the law of their world. They stayed too long. They became too human. And now the spirits have reclaimed them." Silence. Okoro fell to his knees. Tamara shook her head slowly, as though trying to wake from a bad dream. "So they are gone? Forever?" The Dibia closed his eyes. "They are not gone. They are home." He handed Tamara a small gourd. "Pour this under the mango tree. Speak their names. Only then will their spirits settle. If not, they may come again. In another womb. In another time. And they will bring sorrow to another mother." Tamara held the gourd to her chest, and for the first time since her daughters disappeared, she wept, not with grief, but with understanding. The sky over Oji was grey that morning, colorless, dry, and heavy. It hadn't rained, but the earth felt soaked with something unseen. Tamara walked barefoot through the narrow bush path, holding the gourd from Dibia Onyuniku close to her chest. Her wrapper trailed behind her, dusty and damp. Her eyes were fixed, her feet steady, but her heart carried a weight too heavy for the earth to bear. She reached the old mango tree. It stood as it always had, tall, silent, with branches that reached like arms toward the heavens. The same tree where it all began. Where laughter had once filled the air with invisible games and whispered promises. Tamara knelt before it. The bush around her was silent. Even the wind did not stir the leaves. She could feel something watching, something ancient, something sorrowful. With trembling fingers, she uncorked the gourd. The liquid inside was thick, dark, and scented like ash and salt. She poured it slowly into the root of the tree. As it soaked into the soil, a strange breeze circled her, gentle at first, then rising, twisting around her like a whirlpool of memory and sound. She closed her eyes. Kelechi, she whispered, Kosi. At first, there was only silence. Then, a soft rustle. The leaves above began to shimmer, not with sunlight, but with presence. Then came the laughter, not loud, not playful, but familiar. She looked up and saw nothing, but she felt it. She felt them. She saw in her mind's eye the first time they held her fingers as babies. The way they used to hum to each other. The odd language. The late-night stares at the sky. The way their heads tilted in perfect unison when confused. She saw everything again, and this time, she understood. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. I forgive you, she said, her voice shaking. And I release you. Return in peace. Do not carry this pain with you. The breeze settled, and then the mango tree dropped 2 ripe fruits, side by side, landing gently in the soil in front of her. One rolled to her left foot, the other to her right. Tamara stared at them. She smiled, a soft, broken smile, and nodded, I will remember you always. After that morning, things began to change in quiet, surprising ways. It started with laughter. Real laughter. First, Okoro's, then hers. It was as if a heavy veil had been lifted from their home. The nights felt lighter, the air clearer. Tamara's health returned. Her skin regained its glow. Her womb, once silent for years, stirred with life. In the years that followed, Tamara conceived again, not 1, but 5 children. Boys and girls, loud and strong, all born without complication. Their names, Chimeli, Kayam, Ebiub, Somadina, and Little Munochi, filled the air of orgy-like songs. The villagers, once hesitant to come near their home, now visited often. They said the twins had left a blessing behind. And perhaps, they had. Okoro became known not just as a palm wine tapper, but as a man who had survived the mystery of the spirit realm and lived to build something beautiful. Tamara became a midwife, quietly helping other women in the village give birth, guiding them with the wisdom she had earned through fire and sorrow. They did not speak often of Kelechi and Kosi. But on every anniversary of their disappearance, the family would gather beneath the mango tree, light a lantern, and sing softly. No tears. Only songs. The children grew up hearing stories of their sisters, not as ghosts or curses, but as angels who had come briefly to open the door that had long been shut. The tree was no longer feared. It became a sacred place, a place of memory and quiet joy. Tamara and Okoro grew old, surrounded by love and laughter. When Tamara's back bent with age, and her hair turned silver, she would often sit by the tree at sunset, humming the lullaby she once sang to the twins, and sometimes, just sometimes, when the wind passed gently through the mango leaves, she would hear it again, laughter. Soft, familiar, but this time, it did not haunt her, it comforted her.